This is Backstage Bay Area, your all-access pass to the local music scene. Today we're diving into the life and artistry of one of the most innovative voices in modern jazz, flutist, composer, and educator Jamie Baum. With a career that spans over 3 decades and tours in more than 35 countries, Jamie has captivated audiences with her genre-defying work, blending jazz with influences from classical, South Asian, and spoken word traditions. Her groundbreaking new album, What Times Are These?, tackles profound themes inspired by poetry and the challenges of our times, earning rave reviews and 5 stars in Downbeat. As the leader of the Jamie Baum Septet Plus, Jamie has redefined what a jazz ensemble can be, fusing dynamic orchestration with intimate storytelling. Jamie's work resonates deeply with audiences worldwide, whether crafting intricate compositions or exploring improvisational brilliance. Coming up, we'll explore Jamie's musical journey, delve into her creative process, and preview her upcoming performances at SF Jazz. Host Steve Roby joins us right after we hear Song Without Words by Jamie Baum.
That was Song Without Words by flutist and composer Jamie Baum. It's from her 2018 album Bridges. I'm Steve Roby, and this is Backstage Bay Area. Jamie is my guest today, and she joins me now. Hey, Jamie, welcome to the show.
Hey, so glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for being here, too. Jamie, your career has been nothing short of extraordinary. I'd like to start by asking you to take us back to your beginnings. What first drew you to the flute, and how did your early inspirations shape your path in jazz?
Well, I actually started on piano when I was very young, around 3. My mom had actually she went to Juilliard for a year or 2. Actually, she went all through high school and then for a year or 2 playing piano and trombone and singing. And then, was very common in those days, got married, and that was the end of that. Although she did teach piano lessons. I was the 3rd of her 3 children, so by the time she got to me, she wasn't teaching any longer, but still music was a big thing, and so
Right.
she started me on piano lessons very early, and I did that for about 10 years, though I honestly was not serious. Being a musician was not something on my mind. And I didn't really practice very much, but I enjoyed it. And I actually ended up taking some jazz piano lessons when I was about 10 or 11 from
Wow.
a guy who lived a town away from me named John Mehegan. But to make a long story short, I stopped after that. And then I just picked up the flute when I was in high school for fun to meet people and play in a marching band
Yeah.
and just socially. And it really wasn't I graduated high school a year early and really wasn't until around that time that I started becoming really interested. And I guess in terms of what were my inspirations,
hmm
it's always easier to look back with hindsight. But I would say my parents, I was very lucky. They took me to a lot of music when I was very young, probably younger than many parents. So I
hmm
got to hear all sorts of music. And also, they loved to travel and took me along. So that was also inspirational. And so I think between that and then going to New England Conservatory, where there was a very open idea, and studying with people like Jackie Byard, who just had a very sort of more, I hate this term, but like holistic approach
hmm
where
hmm
anything and everything was fodder for your interest. That sort of probably shaped my approach
Sure.
because I love a lot of different kinds of music, have played a lot of different kinds of music and listened to it and done a lot of traveling. So rather than just saying really focused on perhaps straight ahead jazz, which I love, I've had encompassed other influences. And I think that sort of approach came from those types of influences I had that helped
Sure.
shape it.
Was there a particular musician, concert you saw, or album that said, that's it? That's the path I want to take. That's the jazz path for me.
It depends on the day, but really, I'd have to say it was probably Miles and
Mm,
Coltrane
mm, mm.
when I was probably in high school, or my older brother had some recordings of Miles and went away for a semester to Europe abroad and left me with a lot of the recordings. And I really think it was probably Miles and Coltrane, and
Yeah.
then on flute, probably like Hubert Laws and
Oh,
Eric
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dolphy.
Your music bridges jazz with influences from South Asian and classical traditions. How did these elements become part of your sound?
As a flute player, I always loved classical music and played a lot of classical music in addition to jazz.
hmm
And so when I was just starting out, I, like most musicians, had to do other things, and I did a lot of private functions. And because I didn't really play sax, I did a lot of classical with music with flute, violin, and cello, and flute and piano and harp. And so I really loved playing a lot of that, especially Baroque Bach with a lot of the counterpoint and
hmm
just being part of really in the music as opposed to a melody line on top of that. And so I think a lot of that influenced my writing and ways to expand it. As I mentioned, when I went to New England Conservatory, they had Indian music classes, and some of my friends were into it. And I was very lucky to do quite a bit of touring to South Asia. The earliest was in 2002 as a U.S. jazz ambassador, getting to tour India for 3 weeks.
Okay.
And actually, I just came back in October from my 4th time in Nepal and 3rd time in India performing there. So I've loved that music. And of course, for any jazz musician, it's like a kidney candy store because much of South Asian music is more, they don't really use harmony. So, but the way they develop rhythm and melody is very highly developed. And so
Interesting.
that's to have it's like a kidney candy store. You could really do a lot with that in a jazz setting by adding different kinds of harmony and color. So,
Yeah.
and learn a lot in terms of the way they improvise and the way they develop their melodic material. So, and I just love it anyway. I mean, you probably were familiar because he was in the Bay Area for so long with Zakir Hussain, who unfortunately recently passed.
Right.
And I'm sure he had quite a effect on the Bay Area and of course, so much of music. So
definitely. The Jamie Baum Septet Plus has been your flagship ensemble for decades. What makes this group so special to you, and how does it differ from your work with your quartet?
When I moved to New York, I went to the New England Conservatory for my undergrad. And after moving to New York, I had gotten my undergrad degree in jazz flute and jazz composition. And when I moved to New York, I decided to get my master's in jazz composition at Manhattan School of Music. And one of the things required for my recital was to write some music for a larger group. And so in thinking about wanting to highlight the flute more or have it feel like more weighted and necessary, I decided to change the instrumentation of the typical jazz tet, where you usually have trumpet, alto, tenor, and trombone or bari or something like that. If I did that, the flute would seem really small. So I decided to use trumpet, and then I knew a guy who played alto and bass clarinet. And then I had a friend from NEC who played French horn. And so I thought having that instrumentation would offer more colors to work with if I wanted to introduce some of my classical ideas. And also by having a sort of lighter instruments, it would make the flute seem a little more prominent, and also playing alto flute. So it just stuck, and we did the first recording, and it got really good response from the music I had written. And it just was really, for composers, knowing you'll always hear this about Ellington, not that I put myself on that level, but you'll always hear composers expressing how important it is or how valuable it is to know who you're writing for.
Right.
And so it just became a muse for me and the incredible musicians I'd been able to work with were game for anything I wanted to try or experiment with, or so I could really throw anything at them and they would go at it with lots of zest and skill. So it just kept going. The more I got into it, the less I found myself playing as much as I wanted to. So about almost 10 years ago, I started a smaller group called Short Stories, where I did just that. I decided to write music that would fit on one page because as the years went by, my compositions for the septet got longer and more complex. And so I thought I want to go back to my roots of jazz standards and, of course, the wonderful compositions by Monk and Wayne Shorter that fit on one page, but yet offer so much to work with. So that was my goal with the smaller group, Short Stories. And then during COVID, some people moved and this and that. And so I decided to just stick with the quartet. And what really offers me more the other side of my personality of improvising and writing, as I said, for shorter, but leaving more room for improvisation. And it's more intimate in terms of connecting with the quartet and developing that side of things. So I love really having both and the music is quite different except
Yeah.
for a tune or two.
Let's discuss the song Dreams from your latest release. What times are these? What inspired this piece, and how does it represent the dynamic between the Septet Plus and your smaller groups?
Well, that was one of the few pieces that actually was written first for the smaller group. I was looking for ways to take all the stuff I'd learned and worked on for several years with the large ensemble and see what I could do to make a quartet feel
Uh,
big or have a variety of sounds. And so I wrote themes actually for a cousin of mine who had passed away. But it really started with this ostinato, and I actually took the melody from the notes of the ostinato. So if we're playing it correctly, it should sound like the melody's being doubled in the piano.
okay.
And as I was playing it with the smaller group, I started thinking there's just so much in this that I could see orchestrating it for the larger group that would bring out certain things. And so that's what ended up happening. So it's one of the few pieces that really works well in both situations.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful. And let's hear it now. This is Dreams by Jamie Baum here on Backstage Bay Area. That was Jamie Baum's Dreams from her current album, What Times Are These? You're listening to Backstage Bay Area, and Jamie is my guest today. Jamie, for our listeners, can you share the inspirations for your new album, What Times Are These, and how you approach blending poetry with music for this album?
Well, like all musicians, I was on, or many musicians anyway, I was on tour in March 2020, and I was supposed to be on tour for a month. And of course, right smack in the middle of it came COVID with everything being shut down. In fact, I was playing with a group. I wasn't the leader, but we played at the infamous Keystone Corner in Baltimore. And we were the very last group the night before the ordinance came from the governor of the state that everything had to be shut down. So I went back to my small apartment in Midtown New York City and thought, oh gosh, started seeing all the gigs and tours, and teaching, everything being canceled one by one. And of course, we had no idea how long things would go like that. And so I started spending a lot more time on the internet, like most people. And I found this wonderful website that Bill Moyers put up called A Poet a Day. And he just put it up a couple of days after, and it had I can't remember the exact words, but it was quite pithy. And it said, in this time of fear and the unknown, we're going to post a poem and the poet reading the poem every day to give you solace and distraction. And I just got into it. And the wonderful thing about it, I was never a really big poetry person, but I think there's something about watching the poet read the poem.
Yeah.
And then also oftentimes he would post an interview he had done with them at a different time about that poem or about poetry. And so it really drew me in. And of course I sat there and I thought, gosh, who knows how long I'll be at home. And this is a good opportunity to try something new and different that I've never done before. And I realized I've been writing for this large ensemble for recordings already, but I've never written for voice or used lyrics, really.
Interesting.
So that was the decision I made. And I scoured through the different poetry that was posted there and till I started finding things that kind of really spoke to me. And I made my choices based on if I was attracted by the poem, if I could read the poem and envision or hear something that I could do with it musically. Because, of course, modern poetry is so different than the poems they used to use or the Broadway show tunes where things would rhyme and have a certain rhythmic thing to it, very even. And so I really wanted to choose poems that I thought, okay, I could see doing this with it, and I could see creating this kind of style or groove or sound. And that's how I went about it. And then I would just read it over and over in my head until I started hearing melodic ideas.
Yeah.
And then with some poems, I could see what I could do with it, but then I would give myself a challenge like, okay, well, this one I'm going to try to make it like a singer-songwriter would write with a introduction and a refrain and a chorus that would repeat. Or this one, I would do this with it. And then, of course, there was a whole issue of getting permission from the poets or their agents. And some of them were quite strict in that it had to be the exact order, nothing could be repeated or left out.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of different things to deal with, but I had lots of time at home. And so I figured it was a good opportunity to challenge myself and find a way to be distracted from all the craziness going on around me.
For me, that harkens back to, I guess, to the beatnik days, if you will, with jazz beatniks blending music together as they recited time. So while you were talking, I was just thinking how poetry and jazz dates back to that era.
Absolutely. And on one of the pieces, it was my intent. There's a piece called An Old Story by Tracy K. Smith. And I was really hearing this kind of funky groove underneath it. And with adding congas and percussion, it started reminding me of that. And then I had Jonathan Finlayson do spoken word over it. And if you listen to it, it really does sound like that period.
Sorrow Song is another standout from your album. Could you tell us about its backstory and how you approached interpreting Lucille Clifton's poem through music?
Well, Sorrow Song was one of the poems on the website, and I was reading it, and something about it really struck me as like almost like a rapper would sing. These eyes, those eyes, children's eyes, Vietnamese eyes. It just like that repetition. And so I started thinking, wow, that could be like a cool rap type song. And I'd been listening a lot to a couple of recordings that I just loved. One was Nate Smith, Kinfolk. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but he's an incredible drummer and he was doing some really interesting things. And he was using a vocalist, Michael Mayo, and this incredible rapper named Kokai. And I also was hearing Kokai on Terry Lynn Carrington's social science recording, and just really loving that. And then they did something at Carnegie Hall that I went to, and I just thought, wow, I really would just love to have him on this piece. I think he would be great.
Yeah.
And so I was very happy that he was willing to do that, and I thought it just really fit. So it's really, really fun. Fun piece.
It works great. And let's listen to it now. This is Sorrow Song. Not easy for me to say. Sorrow Song. And we'll be back and talk some more. This is Jamie Baum on Backstage Bay Area.
What we gonna do now? Tears, yeah, falling down. All right, here we go. Sorrow song, sorrow song. What we gonna sing about us? Hey, sorrow song. It's the sorrow song. Listen up. We talking about sorrow. Bag of steel or emotionally borrowed from insufficient counts of tears that amount to less than the price of all barrel-aged feral sages. Pulled from pages of long-lost tomes, wild does and home-ground bones for politics of dash hopes and unknowns from alphanumerics tatted to flash shadows casted, indelible levels of apartheid lots thrown, napalm ashes and salty sea splashes from the massacre mermaids, silenced by chains in lieu of Ursula laughing. Baby ain't got the same, so they utter the thoughts and prayers after projectile sprayers. Elected officials are lecture and flavor. Ain't that the one that we come in here savoring like saviors? Complex is knitting, yeah, for a little bit. They got digits, and this is what they do when they come and do. They gotta hit it. It's sorrow song. Oh, that's a bad one. Sorrow song. What they gonna do when they hear now? Sorrow song. They keep singing, but it's sorrow song. Yeah. For the eyes of the children, the last to melt, the last to vaporize, for the lingering eyes of the children. Staring. The eyes of the children of Buchenwald, of Vietnam and Johannesburg. For the eyes of the children of Nagasaki. For the eyes of the children of Middle Passage. For Cherokee eyes, Ethiopian eyes, Russian eyes, American eyes, for all that remains of the children, their eyes, staring at us, amazed to see the extraordinary evil in ordinary men, ordinary men. sorrow song. Sorrow song. Sorrow song. Yeah. Sorrow song. Sorrow song. Sorrow song. Sorrow song. Sorrow song.
That was Sorrow Song from What Times Are These? Jamie Baum is our guest today on Backstage Bay Area. Jamie, can you share with our audience what projects or ideas you're excited to explore in this new year?
Well, the CD recently came out and it's really got so much great attention. I mean, it got 5-star review and downbeat, which is really rare.
Yeah,
and
congrats.
thank you. It made quite a few best of 2024 lists. So I'm excited about some of the gigs that are coming up for that. We're going to be performing at the Kennedy Center
Wow.
in May and have some other tours. And then I'm going to be doing quite a bit more with the quartet, which I'm excited about. I've got a European tour in November. And I'm also doing some things as a side woman, which I really love to do, be on tour all of April and some other dates. So looking forward to all of that. And I'm hoping that we were supposed to record some of the music I'll be playing on this upcoming tour in the Bay Area. We were supposed to record, and after playing some festivals, we're in June of 2020, we were supposed to play the Rochester Jazz Festival and DC Jazz Festival and then go in the studio. So, of course, everything got canceled for a while. And so I'm hoping to go back in the studio or go in the studio with the quartet and record this music. So I have a lot to look forward to.
It sounds like a very busy year.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations on that. Yeah. You have several upcoming Bay Area shows, one in Santa Cruz at the Kumbwa Jazz Center, 2 at SF Jazz.
Actually, it's one at SF Jazz, which is on Friday the 24th.
Right.
And then we're going to be at Bach Dancing and Dynamite, which is not too far on the Sunday the 26th.
At Half Moon Bay.
Right. And we're actually far. We're going to be at Redwood Jazz Alliance on the 23rd, and that's in Eureka. And then we're actually doing a private concert on the 25th in San Luis Obispo.
Can you tell us about the musicians joining you for these performances? What energy or style do they bring to your Septet Plus?
Oh, they're just amazing. I'm so excited about it. I've played with all of them in different situations, but this is the first time all together. So Leo Genovese is just extraordinary. He worked for many years with Esperanza Spalding and her band and is on some of her recordings. He worked with Wayne Shorter and Lainey Stern and several other people and has several recordings of his own out. And I tried to do some things with him several times, and he was always very busy, so I lucked out this time. He's worked with both the bass player and the drummer several times, and I've worked with the bass player, so I'm looking forward to that. Matt Penman, and Matt Penman spent a lot of time out there because he was in one of the SF Jazz configurations, how they have a band. So he's spent a lot of time out there. And then Rob Garcia is someone I've known since I moved to New York pretty much and played with him on and off quite a bit. And he's really wonderful. So I'm very excited. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, it sounds like quite a few exciting shows coming up for the folks here in the Bay Area. And let me remind our listeners that Jamie will perform at the Kumbwa Jazz Center in Santa Cruz at 7 p.m. on Thursday, January 23rd. Then on Friday, January 24th, she'll perform 2 sets at SF Jazz in San Francisco. The first set is at 7 p.m. and the second is at 8:30. The podcast show notes for this episode will include ticket links for all these concerts, including the show we previously mentioned in Half Moon Bay. And finally, Jamie, where can listeners find your music and follow your upcoming tours?
The music is definitely at all the usual sites, Camp, Amazon, the Sunnyside Records website, and all of the usual places you can purchase or download music. And then I believe the record label put it on Spotify and the usual streaming. And then if they want to find out more about me or get on my mailing list, they can go to my website. There's a place that they can sign up for the mailing list. And in terms of the other musicians, they all have websites as well. So
right.
they want to
Okay.
check them out. Yeah.
I'll put links to your website, which is Jamie Baum, BAUM.com.
Right.
Jamie, thank you so much for the great conversation today. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for the great questions and for playing my music. I really appreciate it.
All right. Backstage Bay Area will be right back.
Hey musicians, would you like to be a guest on Backstage Bay Area? Just email the host and let him know when you'll be playing in the Bay Area. The address is backstage.sfbay@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning into the Backstage Bay Area podcast. Don't forget to visit us online at backstagebayarea.com for more insights and stories. Be sure to join us next time for more engaging conversations with local talent and touring musicians. Until then, keep the music alive, and we'll see you backstage.